Today's episode is brought to you by HP Poly, where premium audio and video meet hybrid work. From headsets to video bars, HP Poly keeps your team connected, clear, and collaborative. Learn more at cdw.ca/poly. Welcome to the CDW Canada Tech Talks podcast. I'm your host, KJ Burke, Field CTO for Hybrid Infrastructure at CDW Canada. In this episode, we're going to discuss enterprise AI, where we're at currently, what's the hype about it, what's the reality of it, because more and more the reality is what we need to be figuring out, where we're going from a practical sense with AI in the enterprise. For this talk, I'm excited to be joined by John Encizo from Lenovo. John's the Field CTO and Technical Lead, as well as the Founding Director for Lenovo's Field CTO Suite. John, could you tell me a little bit about what a Field CTO is? I get asked that question every once in a while as well. But what is it at Lenovo, and how do you spend most of your time?
Yeah, so KJ, thanks for having me. Field CTO, in a nutshell, I like to describe it as a jack of all trades, or human duct tape, depending on who you want to talk to. So as a field CTO, it's kind of my role to be part enterprise architect, part business consultant, part marketing, part development, little bit of everything. So working directly with customers, working directly with channel partners like CDW, working with our development teams, and working with my marketing team to say, hey, here's the messaging, here's the product, here's the messaging that we need to put out. So it's really like I said, it's a jack of all trades. I touch everything. I have fingers engaged in everything from development all the way out to PO.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I think one of the really interesting things is you do get to spread yourself out and spend time doing a lot of very, very interesting parts of the job. And one of the things I really like about my role is meeting up with people like yourself that have, different perspectives, different ideas, and sort of pulling that together. So how does one get to the role of field CTO? I mean, a lot of people out there are looking at their career path. What is your career journey, and how did you kind of end up where you're at?
Wow, what an interesting question. So started life as desktop support, moved from desktop support to server engineering at a company. In 2006, I was recruited by IBM to do what was called essentially an above country solutions architect role with a focus on AMD, at that point, it's a very new box, and VMware, which was still, if you're old enough to remember 2006, VMware we were still having arguments about type 1 versus type 2 hypervisors. Stayed in that role as a above country kind of solutions architect who used to be at IBM, it was called Advanced Technical Services. Did that for, 10, 12 years. Became the subject matter expert for lots of different products that we launched. And I remember we had gone to a Gartner conference, and I was kind of getting disillusioned. I had told my boss, if I have to field strip one more server, I think I'm going to lose my mind. And so, we were at the Gartner conference, and yes, I was like, oh yes, this is our 2-socket 2U server. It's just like every other 2-socket 2U server that you've walked around and seen. And then I had, at that point, I think it was the CIO of the Postal Service came up and said, I need to solve a problem. Here's the problem I need to solve for. I have a bunch of legal folks that have to go look at things that we've already filed against new things and do a visual comparison, and it takes hours. And I was like, oh, that's an AI problem. Come here, let me show you something. This is how we solve for this. Came out of that at that Gartner conference, and I was like, you know what? We're doing this all wrong. We're talking about technology, and our users are talking to us about business problems that they need to solve with technology. And so I pitched this to, at that point, who was the president of North America ISG sales, and said, give me 6 months. If you're familiar with Princess Bride, I was like, hey, Wesley, give me 6 months. You can fire me at the end of 6 months if I'm doing this wrong. And I said, I want to create this position, this field CTO, and I don't want to be on a quota. I want to be an internal consultant for sellers and partners, and I want to go talk to customers about business problems and then architect the solutions on the back end. And that's what
Yeah,
happened.
it's really interesting how much, in some ways that parallels my career as well, starting on the service desk. And then, yeah, VMware
Mhm.
was definitely a turning point. But one of the things you mentioned there that I think is really powerful is that you just saw a problem and wanted to fix it. And
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
think you're right. I think at some point it becomes less of a technology solving the problem and more of the process that's needed and getting the people trained and all of that
absolutely.
as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm an old guy, right? I'm going to be honest. And part of why I moved into the field CTO role is, as an old guy, I can only keep up with technology so much, right? I
Yeah.
have some younger folks that I've hired that are all gung ho, and I'm like, hey, here, let me explain architectural rigor. Let me explain a thought process and how we approach problems. And I think that's the biggest thing with being a field CTO. It's you have to know the technology, and you have to know how to relate old technology to new technology. But it's really fundamental. It's the fundamentals of how to think,
Hmm.
right?
And you're right in the sense that early in my career when I got into IT, I felt that if I could do IT for 4 or 5 years, I would be just as skilled as everybody else because all the technology for the most part changes every 4 or 5 years. But you're
Mhm.
right. I think as you move further into your career, I think you start to understand that the business challenges don't necessarily change every couple of years.
Correct. Correct. I tell if you're familiar with those little things that you put on the desk where you have the ball and you pop it and it goes back and forth. I mean,
Yeah.
frankly, that's and I tell this to folks all the time. I'm not solving I'm not solving any new IT issues that I haven't solved for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
How I solve them, completely different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make
And the
not make
toolkit.
information accessible, secure the crown jewels of the information, put data in the hands of the end user so they can do their job. It's IT 101.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I think that lays a good groundwork to kind of get into the start of this, and so I want to talk about enterprise IT, and I do think enterprise
Yeah.
IT is going to be unique from sort of what we're experiencing from a consumerization of IT and what we're seeing, on our phones or on our
Hmm.
laptops that we're sort of interacting with. Um, what are some of the things that people might be surprised in when you look at the enterprise that really are AI, but maybe they haven't thought of them as AI? So what are some of the earlier parts of these
Yeah.
AI changes that maybe we've already seen that people would maybe not think about as AI?
Yeah. So one of the things we do is we have this thing called our hybrid AI vision, which means we try and put AI in the devices consuming the data that end users need to do their job.
Hmm.
So perfect example, things that you may not think of AI. Anybody taking a photograph with their phone recently? Congratulations, you're using AI. Anybody spoken to their phone or their Alexa or their Google Home recently? Congratulations, you're using AI. Anybody running a spam filter or using Outlook's focused inbox? Congratulations, you're using AI, right? It's funny as an OEM, right? I need to put a paint a picture of innovation, and we do that. We do that real well, and we talk about the things that customers want to hear about. But the reality is, and this has been my experience for years, if I'm talking about the technology, I'm most likely not making money with the technology. Right? Like I said,
Hmm.
harken back to 2006. I was arguing about type 1 and type 2 hypervisors. If you were to ask somebody that's a VMware admin today what type of hypervisor it is, they'd go, it's ESXi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody cares because it's a moot point. The technology's tried, it's true, we're making money with it, we're saving money with it, nobody cares. It's the same with AI, right? Right now, generative AI and agentic AI, all the rage. Everybody wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
Businesses are making money with machine learning, with computer
Mhm.
vision, predictive analytics. Been doing it for years.
Yeah, I think that's really important too. I love the spam filter example because it kind of walks people through the process of, human in the loop to actually just giving it autonomy and letting it do its job.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good one. How have chatbots, you mentioned some of the consumerized, the chat GPTs and that, but how have chatbots changed the conversation in the enterprise around AI?
So again, I used to work at IBM before Lenovo bought all those assets, right? And I was an IBM customer many years ago when I was a customer. Um, I when I was in IT, and even now talking to customers, IT has always been this pocket protectors, geeks, the Ministry of No, if you've ever read any Dilbert, right? It was always this place where kind of dreams went to die. Um, and IT was always seen as it's that thing, and they give us the stuff we need to do our job, but it's not really, we don't understand any of those technologies. When Chat GPT rolled out and this generative AI, now all of a sudden it took what is an extremely complex technology and packaged it in such a way that an average user can now start doing things with it. I mean, if you think about the early promise of RPA, that was the early promise of RPA. We're going to do intelligent automation. We're going to bring RPA in, and you're going to be able to automate all of your workflows. Did that happen? No, because it's very brittle. ChatGPT came in and said, yeah, I'm not going to do everything for you. I'm going to give you a Copilot. Just connect it to your mailbox, and now you can chat with your mailbox. Right? I use Copilot, right? I need to do quarterly reviews on my team. I just have it. Here's a prompt. I feed it. Go read my mailbox. Give me a summary. And it's made kind of this. It's made AI accessible. Oh, there's a camera. It does AI. It does computer vision. Okay, I don't really know what that does. Hey, here's a chatbot. Ask it a question. Oh, how do you cook a cake? Okay, here's the ingredient. Oh, that's AI. Cool. Can we get more of that? And I think that's kind of what's caused it to turn the corner. Right now, AI is being talked about by everybody, where in the past, if you asked an end user about VMware, they would be like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting how once you consumerize something, it becomes available. Like my dad knows what ChatGPT
Yeah,
is, right?
exactly.
It's definitely a huge change. Are there some other significant changes that maybe sort of preceded this general interest in AI, but that are really relevant for the AI conversation in enterprise? Maybe that's around some of our data management or data governance, or
Yeah.
but are there other aspects that maybe have preceded this that as professionals we should know about?
Yeah. So I literally just got out of a briefing before I walked in here, and I asked everybody, "What are your big problems?" Well,
Hmm.
figuring out the ROI from AI. Okay, great. That's everybody's trying to figure that out. Number two, how do I get my data? How do I get my data ready? Right? It's not, and I'm not talking about storage. Storage is a big component of that, but it's more about I'm trying to solve this business problem.
Hmm.
Right? Just think about anybody's organization, right? I'm trying to solve this business problem. I'm an OEM. You put a PO into my system. I need a seller to put something in Dynamics. I've got SAP. I've got my manufacturing execution system. I've got my warehouse management system. I have data in all these different places. And an SR675 V3 server with an NVIDIA H200 NVL GPU, that's a text description. There's a part number that goes in, that's attached to a quote in Dynamics. Well, then there's an SAP thing, and that SAP thing doesn't have that. It has a SAP number associated with an order because it's people. So imagine you're trying to leverage AI to say, I want to get a holistic view of my supply chain,
Yeah.
right? And now you've got to take all these different systems and translate among them. And dates and times may not be the same. Product descriptions may differ. Part numbers may differ based on when you ordered something. And so customers are looking at this and they're going, I can't solve this. Unless you're a brand new 2025 company, you've got legacy data that's organically morphed over time. And so they're like, I can't spend $1 billion to come in and fix my data platforms and my data estate. I can't do it. What do I need to do? And so that's where we as technical professionals can come in and go, you know what? Let's talk about what you're trying to solve. And then let's look at map the flow of data across all those systems. And we're not going to solve everything. We're going to eat the elephant one bite at a time. Let's solve just those 6 data systems that workflow uses. Let's clean the data. Let's put the tools in place to make that ready. I think that's
Yeah, I think
one.
that's good advice, and I think when you start to marry the whole, workflow and the data flow that's required for that, I think that's uh, definitely relevant. I think we'll talk a bit more as we go forward about, some of the ways to solve for some of those challenges, because
Hmm.
I do think we're all experiencing this kind of in
Yep.
real time together. So when we think about chatbots, we think about the overall attention to AI. There's some obvious changes in the dynamics that we've seen there. What are some
Hmm.
of the other challenges in the enterprise that are driving this AI hype? Because I think there's the hype and there's the it's going to solve every problem that we've ever experienced in an easier way, which I think again kind of comes back to that disillusionment when people start to dig in. But what is some of the hype that's driving this investment and that you're seeing when you talk to executives and leaders?
I think the big so KJ, I think the big thing that's driving the hype, right, is every business is trying to figure out how to do more with less,
Hmm.
right? More work with less people. Um, Produce more stuff, waste less stuff, right? I'd love to drive more traffic through my door, but I'm realistic. If I can take my existing shoppers and instead of having them buy X, have them buy X plus Y, I
Hmm.
can make more money. And so it's this, how do I create more? How do I give time back to my employees or my customers? How do I reduce my risk? And how do I make money or save money? That's everybody's trying to figure that out with AI. And so I think that's what's driving a lot of these conversations of I need to use AI because the tools IT has given me in the past, they're solving, they're not transformational. A lot of times they're not even evolutionary or revolutionary. They're just same stuff, different day, right?
Hmm.
Oh, we're going to go from Windows 10 to a Windows 11. That's not transformational. That's you just need to make sure you get security updates. Ooh, I got a new taskbar icon. Yay. So I think that's what's driving a lot of this executive hype, right? Is they've used Chat GPT, they've seen, oh man, I can have Chat GPT write me a report. That's
Hmm.
so easy. This must be great. Throw this AI thing at all of our data problems. Throw this AI thing at my manufacturing line, and watch magic come out the other side. And as sellers, we've fanned those flames, right? We fed the hype monster because that's what our customers want to talk about. But the the sellers that are successful are the ones that level set expectations up front.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's really important that we view a lot of this as in the the persona we're talking to, and so I
Hmm.
think you give a really good example there with the executive level, and you're right, they want to grow the business, they want to optimize the business, and I think it becomes incumbent upon the line of business owners, the
Yes.
frontline workers, a lot of times to have the ideas of how that's actually going to be done.
Yes.
So when you think about the success within the organization, where organizations are having sort of fast success with AI, what
Hmm.
are some of the types or what are some of the areas within the organization that are helping drive that success? Like I think if you look at sort of medium-sized
Right.
enterprise doesn't have a lot of data scientists, right? So
Right.
how are we seeing these different teams and what are the types of teams that organizations need in order to start
Yeah.
building that success?
So there's I'm going to kind of break it out into there's two different approaches to solving for these things. We've seen a ton of success with a lot of these kind of computer vision edge AI solutions because they solve a very specific business problem that's relatively easy to define and you can get to an ROI relatively easy. So we've created a whole set of validated designs. Right? You go to Lenovo Press, you go Lenovo validated design for smart spaces, right? There's three of them that pop up. It's really easy, right? Put a camera, use your existing camera, solve this. I'm going to put this in here and I'm going to be able to do traffic management. Saves me money. Real easy. Where it gets more nebulous is when you move from that camera looking at the physical world to starting to move into generative and agentic AI. And if you haven't heard of agentic AI is the new big thing everybody wants to talk about. It's essentially empowering a large language model to make physical changes to the digital or physical universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Schedule a meeting, buy a thing, execute on a PO. That's, agentic AI. And I think that's where those are much harder lifts because they require much more integration into existing business systems and more detailed analysis of the workflow and more onboarding of the customers, stakeholders. So they can have big transformational value, but they're bigger lifts, harder sales, and they make you sticky, but you got to tread through a lot of mud to get to success.
Yeah, I think that's really important to understand too, and I think that this focus on AI, as you mentioned, has been a bit of a resurgence of some of the more traditional
Mm-hmm.
AI use cases like computer vision, which I think is great. I think that it definitely a lot of those systems already exist. You have the cameras, you have
Exactly.
the data streaming already. You're just not analyzing,
Right.
in the way that you can today, which is really interesting. How has how has AI and the perception of AI in the marketplace started to change the way that our customers look at us as organizations? Like I can't think. I think maybe our board and our executives are a little frustrated at the pace in which we're adopting AI tools,
Mm-hmm.
but I also got to think that from a consumer perspective, the consumers of our technologies and our products and our services are also impatient for us to start offering up things. But what are we starting to see from consumer and customer expectations?
So a couple things that I think have really started to happen. So I call 2025 the revenge of the CFO. So last year, C-suite was excited. Everybody was throwing money at AI. Generative AI is going to solve all these things. And yes, and it's going to, CEOs, the part nobody wants to say out loud, right? We're going to be able to get rid of extra employees and save money. And that happened. But we're also seeing folks going, it's really not as smart as we thought it was. Maybe we shouldn't fire all of our customer service people.
Yeah.
But I think our customers are coming to us and they're like, look, I need you to help me separate hype from reality. I need you to help me figure out where should this technology live? How do I secure this thing? Because it's scary as heck. And what do I need to do to get to the business outcome I need as quickly as possible with as little as expense as possible? And you're right, in the mid-market, they're not full of data scientists. And so if we look at a risk reward, revenue versus effort, kind of a matrix or a differentiation versus a time to ROI, customers are starting to come to us and say, help me find the problem, bring me something that is already packaged. If I have to build it, I can't support it. Because I probably have DBAs, maybe. I probably have people that do analytics and BI, maybe. Could they do some stuff with AI? Yes, but they're not data scientists. If you can help them assemble the components and say, hey, this is not as hard as it looks. Here's the components. Let's assemble them. It's a software development effort. You already have software developers on site, probably. Let's work with them. This is where CDW can come in and go, we'll help tune your model. We can come back every 6 months and give you a health check on that and make sure it works. You guys just need to focus on getting the right data, keeping the data clean, moving things forward. That's what the customers that I'm talking to are asking me for, right? Mm-hmm. Get me jump started, help me set up the things that I need to put the data in place, come back every 6 months and make sure I haven't gone off the rails. But I don't want to build it. I just want to, right? I want to either assemble it or I want to buy it because it's faster ROI. And my team needs to focus on other things.
Yeah, and I do think that's another concept that I think a lot of people well, not a lot of people, but I think especially at the executive level, this idea of continuing to reinvest and course correct these AI tools. I think that's huge. You need to be evaluating, you need to be double checking, you need to be reinvesting. No, I think it's a great point.
One of the things I do, KJ, is I tell folks, if it took you $1 million to build it, mm-hmm. to assemble it, to roll that project out, you better budget $1 million a year, right? $1 million to build it, it's going to cost you $1 million a year.
Yeah, and that way you've got the funding allocated to do those types of effort. And I think that's really smart and it's good guidance. One of the other sort of main challenges we've seen is this growth of data and mm-hmm. how are organizations succeeding with both having this increase of data and this increased demand of data, but also not completely blowing up their budgets? Are there certain things that organizations are doing in this landscape of large data sets that seem to be working better than others?
Yeah, there's a few things that I'm seeing. So data tiering, not a new concept, right? We've had that for years, but now it's, particularly when we talk about AI, it becomes even more critical, right? So block, super performant, great for high speed, a little bit more complicated to manage. File is great. That's why we have an AI pod with NetApp, to help folks, hey, you got your files. But what we're seeing is this tiering is object storage is really the storage protocol for AI. And so we're seeing people start to say, okay, let me deploy object here. And then I want to make sure if I deploy object here, I also want to be able to connect it to object in the cloud, right? S3 bucket in Amazon, connecting to Glacier or whatever. And then I've got, Cloudian storage here. So we're seeing customers start to look at taking tiering data seriously. The days of I just buy a big storage array and I just keep adding more drives, those are gone. Right now it's like, okay, seriously, what data needs to be fed into the AI system? And let's put the right storage array underneath it and this right storage protocol. That's one way. The other way I'm seeing is going back to the computer vision solution, right? The folks that are succeeding are processing the data in real time as close as possible to the thing that's generating the data. And instead of capturing video of empty aisles and streaming that back at 1080p, they're just triggering on events and they're sending a JSON file back, right? Or they're sending data clips back of relevant source information. And so there's doing a lot of heavy duty upfront analytics and AI to shrink the amount of actual data that needs to get transmitted on the wire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. And we are seeing that more and more really at the edge being able to do that compute. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, especially with something like video data, do you really need that stream or do you need the insights that you're pulling out of that stream? So
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned when we were talking on our pre-call was around the post Excel workspace, and I got to say, for me, like you mentioned, I started on the service desk. I was a network admin. I was a data center admin. A lot on the virtualization space, power cooling, all that kind of stuff. Databases, BI reports, Excel, like those were all areas where I don't know if I actively avoided it, but at least passively avoided it. So could you kind of explain to me like what is the post Excel workspace and how does that change the way that we approach tracking and working with data?
Yeah, so to clarify for those that weren't on our conversation, right? If you look at, I can't tell you how many companies, I know we do it. My program manager, um, she loves her spreadsheets, man. I have a system that has tracking tickets and it has data sets. And first thing she wants to do, she'll go into Click, which is a business analytics tool, and she'll download all that data and put it in Excel and create pivot tables. So, and the reason people are doing that, and there's a reason Microsoft turned Excel into a programming language. But the reason people are doing that is there's such this vast knowledge base around how to use it. There's a community of people that understand Excel, and it's easy for people to grasp. There's
Mhm.
rows, there's columns, there's math formulas, there's multiple tabs that you can. It's a very simple thing to understand. It's a very powerful tool, but it's a simple thing to understand. And when you get to all these other systems, SAP Analytics does stuff differently than Click, which does differently than Dynamics, which does different. And so end users are like, this is my minimum viable product. I can do everything I need to do here. To move past that, and this is where I call it generative BI, right? So this is actually where we're starting to see folks innovate, which is stick a chatbot in front of it. Now you can talk to the chatbot the way you would talk to a person on your operations team and say, I need you to look at the forecast for last quarter, every blue widget that I sold into this zip code. What was the length of the delivery date? And can you just give me that for Mondays that were odd numbered? And instead of somebody going out and going, oh, okay, let me go write a SQL query. Now what you have is a generative AI model that's sitting there that's taking your intent, trying to figure out your intent, work with you collaboratively to build those things. Because at the end of the day, that's what people are making pivot tables because they're trying to understand the data.
Hmm.
And if I can front a chatbot in front of that to do generative BI, I can get everything I need. And AI models can make graphics. They can read PDFs, they can read graphics, they can read traditional databases. That stuff's all there. It's baked in functionality. And so we're starting to see that's getting to the post Excel world, right? Where I'm not passing around spreadsheets through email. There's a source of truth that says this is the model, it's got all the information, ask it whatever question you want, and it'll give you your answer. It's the the
Yeah, and those of us, I'm sure, having not heard generative BI as a term before, I immediately envision certain people in my organization. I'm like, that's the person that would want that. And so
Mhm.
I think that's a good example of how we know in some ways how AI and how these tools are going to impact but that's a good one. I like that. I'm going to go talk to Michael Chang about that and be like, hey, Gen BI, let's go. So that's good. So one of the last sort of challenges I kind of want to talk about because I
Yeah.
want to start talking a little bit about how we mitigate some of these challenges. I think we talked about some really good things as far as object storage and how we're doing that and operating at the edge. But how else is data portability a challenge? I mean, when we look at like the hybrid infrastructure, I've got stuff in potentially multiple hyperscalers. I've got stuff at the edge. I've got stuff in my data center. Um, how is data portability, a challenge, and what are organizations doing in that space?
So there's multiple different technologies that kind of get woven together. So this is where, again, this is kind of where object storage from a storage protocol is so powerful, right? If you object storage doesn't care what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a file? Doesn't, is it an Excel document? Is it a picture? Don't care. There's a resource located, there's a URI located that locates that one thing. So that helps with portability because that essentially that object storage protocol is standard. Every storage vendor's incorporated into their storage array. Every cloud vendor has object storage. So that helps you move data seamlessly across multiple different places. The more complicated piece is how do I dynamically clean the data, make the data accessible? And that's where you start getting into these concepts of like data lake houses, where you see the stuff that, for example, stuff we're doing with Databricks, Snowflake, Cloudera, right? These folks that have built these kinds of tools. And so as an architect, if you lean back about 5-7 years ago, right, this whole concept of a data fabric and a data mesh were starting to gain popularity. And now what we're seeing is we're seeing AI tools kind of put in the middle of that to start doing some of this live real-time translation of data so that it makes it easier to connect systems and have this AI bot in the middle doing real-time translation, right? If I can translate English to Spanish, there's no reason I can't translate Dynamics 365 to SAP. Right? There's a rule set, there's context extraction. And so that's helping with the data portability because now I can have AI start to interpolate between different systems. I use object storage as a protocol, which becomes a common, minimum viable product, minimum viable context that I can push things anywhere I need to go. I think that's where we're seeing, and that's how we're seeing customers solve this as well. Right?
Yeah, and more these conversations have started to become platform conversations. How do we standardize things? How do we?
Yes.
So okay, yeah, I think that's key, and then understanding that you know leveraging object stores across all of that hybrid infrastructure is
Yes.
a way to simplify. That's pretty powerful. Um, are there some other key challenges that we should just touch upon before we start talking more about how to mitigate more of these challenges? Are there other things that you find, just come up with customers where they're really struggling with their AI implementations?
So I think it would kind of break down into, let's call it three categories, right? So we'll say infrastructure. If you look at from an AI maturity, AI readiness infrastructure, and that infrastructure is how do I leverage AI in the cloud, on-prem, at the edge, on a device, in a data center, doesn't matter. A lot of folks don't realize that while for computer vision, I can do relatively low power, right? 1 gig Ethernet's plenty. We start moving out of computer vision and natural language processing and start moving into these generative and agentic things. People don't realize that an AI server is not your mother's server. What's the Cadillac commercial, right? It's not your grandfather's
Yeah.
Cadillac. An AI server, the wattages involved in a single GPU are crazy. I mean, we're talking 600 to 750 watts per GPU, and we're talking about putting 8 of those in a server.
Hmm.
And that server, by the way, now weighs almost 2 times as much as your traditional 2U server because of the amount of metal packed into it. And so customers that are looking at AI, first thing is the physical components. Right? Do you have the power? Do you have the cooling? Do you have a raised floor? Well, what's the load bearing weight of your raised floor? Because it'd be really bad if we rolled your rack in and it collapsed your raised floor.
Yeah.
There's that component. And then there's the cost of entry, right? I mean, look at an H200 NVL PCI card. It's a list price. It's like a $47,000 GPU,
Hmm.
right? And customers see that and they go, whoa, I can't do that. And the reality is there's a lot of AI technologies out there to help distill things down so that you don't need to buy that $150,000 server. You can do that to start with at 25K. Right? Get a single L40S card or a pair of L40S cards, put it in a 2-socket 2U Intel server. It's $30,000, $30,000 list entry cost. It runs great. Run plenty of stuff for a mid-market customer.
Yeah, I think that's important for people to understand too. And if you're building with the right types of platforms, you have portability between those as well,
Correct.
which is really important too. And in that, if I am choosing an AI platform I'm going to use, and being able to scale from developer or being able to move it to the edge or being able to move it closer,
Yeah.
closer to where my customers are, and that's really important. So
That's why NVIDIA came out with, and I hate to give a shameless pitch for NVIDIA. It's not like they need more publicity, but I mean that's why they came out with NVIDIA AI Enterprise, right? Their
yep,
their purpose with NVIDIA AI Enterprise was to essentially create a platform that people could consume these things called NIMs, these AI models out of the cloud that they can run on the prem, they can run in a hyperscaler, it doesn't matter. You can load it on your box here, load it on a GPU in the cloud, and it creates a standardized common base that you can build on top of.
yeah, yeah, and I think that that's again really powerful. And I think that not only the NIMs, but Rapids and their sort of data pipeline,
Correct.
I think all of that just brings it all together. So so let's talk. Let's kind of. I think we did a really good job of breaking down some of the challenges people are seeing in the enterprise, some of the ways that we're adapting to those challenges.
Mhm.
Um, how can IT teams, if we're really talking to the technical people in an organization, how can they speed up that AI adoption process? I mean, internally, what I'm seeing, and we're seeing some, we recently did a market trend report, and we're finding that a lot of it's coming down to training and actually like supported AI tools. But
Mhm.
how can IT teams help drive success within the organization? Where can they focus?
So I think there's a couple different areas, and I agree, right? There's a lot of training. One of the things that I generally recommend when I talk to customers is great, you've got your AI center of excellence, and that's all your really smart people. That does not help an end user. So one of the things we did when we rolled out Copilot here at Lenovo, and some of the other AI tools we built, we create centers of competency.
Mm,
So I have a bunch of folks that said, hey, here's 10 prompts for how to leverage Excel to create better pivot tables or to use Copilot to comb through your email and create a summary. Cool. Feed that out. Give that to the users. And now the end users start using it and they go, yeah, that worked, but I found this other really cool thing to do. And so you get this snowball effect where the end users start helping each other.
hmm
That's one way that IT can help, right? Is seed the ground and then let the end users help themselves. That's the most powerful thing. Because let's be honest, if you've ever worked in a help desk, that's what they do anyway. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I'm an old guy, right? I remember way back when I worked at a hospital, right? And we were using Windows NT for the desktop. For those that don't know, that was like a really, really old, that's a really, really early version of a network connected Windows. And we were seeing all this traffic. And we're like, what the heck is going on? What is all this network traffic? And some user had figured out how to use NetBEUI to send messages. And so this was like prehistoric Teams. We went out there like, oh my God, look at what they're doing. This is crazy. But they had a problem and they needed to solve it and they figured it out on their own because IT couldn't give them the stuff. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that IT teams can do, we call it dog fooding here, right? Eat your own dog food. Use AI in IT for IT. Stand up a chat bot, stick it in front of your knowledge base and start leveraging it internally and build a proof case. Um, yeah, everybody wants self-healing machines and all this other stuff. Great, amazing, wonderful, big lift. Take a chatbot, build a RAG system with a knowledge graph, so graph RAG, pointed at pointed at your logs to look at all the to analyze logs and give you correlations, right? Build those use cases because I can take that same graph RAG bot for my help desk and I can turn around and say, hey, legal, hey, HR, we can do the same for you. Oh, hey, customer service, let me show you how we can do like we're doing log analysis. Let me show you how we can analyze stuff coming into your customer service desk to help either predict problems or upsell customers. And you build that, IT builds those use cases internally that then they can go show the rest of the business.
Yeah, I really like that concept of center of competence. Like we're, we focused internally on building out a center of excellence around AI. And I had not had a term for sort of the grassroots side of AI enablement, but I really like that. And so I may steal that one and use that in the future. So I
Free.
appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's like I said, the customers that have been most successful, that's the way they've done it, right? It's start from you got to do the Oreo, right? C-suite buy-in, and then the end user buy-in, and then IT, if they're lucky, they're making all of the goodness in the middle happen.
Yeah, for sure. So when you think about that over a period of time, what does that AI innovation within the enterprise look like? Sort of 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. How does that change if you have that community of competency that's coming together? You start small, you start to
Mhm.
build those RAG use cases. What does that look like 6 months later for organizations you've seen move down that path?
So one of two things happen. Either they take those use cases and they start creating organizational change that, based on how those are impacting day-to-day activities,
Hmm.
and they start taking those and they start accelerating into other areas of AI. Because once you've mastered graph RAG bots, right? Because you've started to understand how LLMs can hallucinate, and so you've started to build guardrails. You've started to figure out how to extract data. Your next stepping stone, I've got RAG bots down. Now I can start to think about agentic AI, and I build organizational and business process change to go along with it. Versus the folks that just, hey, here's my graph RAG thing, and we're using it, and it's an answer bot, but I don't create any organizational change, and so those projects stall out. They lose momentum because all you're doing is you're what we call lipstick on a pig, right? You haven't changed any of the business processes. You've just put a shiny new interface into the same old bad business processes.
Yeah, I almost hate to say it sometimes, but because I think if there's any term that people are maybe more fatigued of than AI, it's digital transformation.
Oh God,
and
yes.
but at the end of the day, you're right. It's really about taking the technology and then updating the way that you set up your processes and the way that the business does
Correct.
business. And I don't have a better term than digital transformation, unfortunately. But they all
Yeah.
talk to my marketing team. But so we covered a bunch of stuff from the
Yeah.
beginning, some of the challenges, what we're doing to mitigate those challenges. I learned about center of competence. I love that. I think that's a really, really good idea. I understanding how the platforms are being developed, understanding how we're creating, better ways to store data, use data. Maybe tell me three things that you think um, that AI is going to change the enterprise for the better for the next couple of years. Some of the things maybe that aren't on the table, or maybe you're seeing very innovative customers do today. But what are maybe three things that would surprise me about AI in the enterprise as we go forward?
So I think what you're going to see, this is my crystal ball, and I actually had made this prediction in 2019, so I'm glad it's finally starting to happen. So you saw Google release this concept of A to A, agent to agent. I think what we're going to see is that now that we've started to build standard mechanisms for AI to extract data from existing business data sources and a standard way for agents to interact with each other, I think we're going to start seeing businesses, and I hate to say this, like the 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 digital front door is is going to change. It's going to look different. I think we're going to now see more and more of this agent to agent interactivity where, KJ's got he's got his laptop with an NPU, and it's, you're creating basically a mini database about you. It knows you and what you want and how you want it. You can spawn off agents, and instead of going and Google searching, so if I'm Google, I'm very worried, which is why they came up with A2A, right? You go, hey, I need to book a Thai restaurant for dinner tonight, and I want it to be, less than $50 for a single plate and 4 stars or above. Go find it for me. And so
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see like businesses are surfacing these agents that connect. So I think that's one of the things we're going to see. Right? So the APIs were originally, that was the promise of APIs. I think A2A is going to be the way that the API economy for businesses actually takes hold, because now you're going to be able to create something. You know, if you're an end user, you're not writing to an API, but as an end user, you can build a personal agent that can go do things for you. I think that's going to be the big thing, right? As we're going to see, this agent to agent interaction is going to drive whole new areas of business. I think it's going to drive a whole new, I think it's going to reshape the internet, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to drive whole new areas of business, whole new ways of intersecting. And I think that's going to change. That is going to change the face of how businesses interact with their customers. Again, crystal ball. If I'm doing all this agent to agent intersection, there's going to come a point where, we already are there. I don't want to talk to a computer. I want to talk to a human being.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely very interesting.
Right.
And that would even now, I would rather talk to a research assistant than go to like a Google search. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And when you start interacting with the business, the business, so the concierge experience, it's going to be a human being. It's not going to be a digital thing. I think that's where we're going to see a change. Now that human being that you're interacting with is going to be augmented on the back end by a whole host of AI technologies to
Hmm.
surface information and help them do things. But there'll be the digital front door for the day to day, and the concierge experience is all going to be about the person. And what the businesses are going to do is there's going to be this push to drive AI to push more and more information and capabilities to those front facing people, those undesk workers. I think that's going to be a massive change that we'll see, and AI is going to empower a lot more of that. That would just come two things, and I think last but not least, where we're going to see. I think what's going to happen, again, crystal ball moment. I think we're going to see a short term, 3 to 5 years out, we're going to see a rude awakening as the actual cost of AI to businesses, to the economy, to the environment starts to drive its way home. Right? I
Hmm.
love NVIDIA, but when you're talking about putting a megawatt in a 48U rack,
Yeah.
that's just bonkers. Now, does a small business need that? Does a mid-sized business need that? No. But all of your hyperscalers, they're the ones that are buying that. And guess what? That stuff's not cheap. I
Yeah.
think we're going to see the costs. We're going to see the same thing we started to see with cloud costs, right? They're going to start to go up as the subsidies. Right now, a lot of that's being subsidized by ad spending and other things. But as the physical infrastructure, the development costs start to spiral, you're going to see that's going to get passed on to consumers, and it's going to drive some changes.
Yeah. Yeah. We were just talking the other day. I was talking with some people, and I was saying, you know what? I think there's a business model to be made for, creating a geothermal electrical extractor that you just put in between these GPU farms and the chillers that the facilities people are using to cool the chilled water loop, and just put it in there and heat exchange into energy before you put
So
things into the chiller.
it's funny you bring that up. I mean, I have seen shameless pitch for Lenovo. That's how our Neptune warm water cooling works.
Oh,
Literally,
that's
it's
that's
it's a
super
it's a
smart.
heat pump.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me 100-degree air. I'm going to push it out at 145, 150 degrees. And unless you're living in the desert, that hot to cold transfer happens. And so power bill goes down, water usage goes down.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Just as you
Yeah,
point out, like the amount of energy and therefore the heat byproduct out of these is massive. It's
yeah,
yeah. Sort of last question for you. I really appreciate you jumping on
yeah.
the podcast, John. Lots of really good tidbits. I always appreciate. I learn from these, and so I appreciate that. What are you most excited about here as we go forward with AI? Like what is the thing that sort of calls to you?
Hmm.
This future state.
I think the thing that calls to me the most is, and this is kind of, it's not so much AI technology itself, but I think it's the organizational changes that it's driving, right? I love this concept of taking AI, distilling out small language models, leveraging computer vision, tying these systems together, and not replacing people. Because there comes a point, if you get rid of all your workers and replace them with AI, you have no customers um, at some point, right? But it's taking that stuff and it's like a Star Trek moment, right? I mean, it's just like I'm putting so much information in the hands of end users that you see innovation really sparking at the ground up and being
Hmm.
driven by that. That to me is exciting. Like I've got one of my guys, my AI guy for the channel, right? He's my golden child. He's like, hey, Doc, can you go do da da da? Boom. Here's a prompt to research your customer. Oh, here's a, you know, here's a thing, here's a thing. And it's just, I love that, right? That gets me excited is the ability to just be so super creative to tie stuff together and drive out this innovation. I think that's what excites me is not the innovation in the technology, but the innovation that the technology enables.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it. I love the idea of getting more face to face time, and you're right, like you're able to do that part of the job so much more effectively that it actually gives you time to engage with the customers and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so yeah, so like I said, really appreciate you jumping on the call, John. Really excited to see kind of where we're going, and I love it when you can come in, you can break it down and bring up those examples, and yeah, I love the Princess Bride. So that was a good one earlier too.
Exactly.
So. But to listeners out there, really appreciate you joining us. It's John Encizo, Field CTO for Lenovo. Really appreciate your insights, John.
Thank you, KJ. I appreciate you having me and looking forward to doing one of these again with you sometime.
That'd be awesome. Always welcome back. So thanks for joining us for the CDW Canada Tech Talks podcast. I've been your host, KJ Burke. John, really appreciate it. And, look for another episode next month. And then also look for some smaller tidbits of information we'll be doing in between as we go forward with the podcast and try to bring more information to our listeners. So thanks again
Awesome.
and have a good day.
Thanks, KJ.